So welcome back to the Dogs and Deadlifts podcast. Today we're going to continue with our Pet Professionals series, and we have Stephanie Perrier from Canada. Welcome.
How's it going?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. I was just about to say we're at the tail end of our summer here in Australia. How is it for you over there?
We're just finally starting to get to spring, never mind in summer, but things are melting. We're not flooded this year, so it keeps it going. The dogs are a little muddy, but that's why we're used to it.
Fantastic. You know, I obviously I wanted to. We've known each other for a little bit, but I wanted to get you on and have a chat, especially about our the current mini series that I'm doing, the Pet Professional series. But before we sort of get into health and fitness and some of the stuff that you do and I follow along, but can you tell us a little bit about I suppose your background, how you got started in dogs to start with?
So I started in dogs. I didn't grow up with them, but I started as like my late teens, just working in a dog daycare. I had fostered for a rescue for a little while, and they happened to have a full-on cage-free boarding daycare facility. And you watch the different dogs, you learn a whole lot about behavior just by observing, but it was still kind of like, how do we sit there and deal with these dogs, right? How do we manage these dogs? Which led me into actually apprenticing with just a general pet dog trainer who happened to actually compete as well. Yeah. So I'd say it was probably with her a couple of months before she started talking about this sport that she was training in. And it was literally just competitive obedience. And of course, you start to get curious, and one thing led to another. Started training and apprenticing with my first dog in CKC, or Canadian Kennel Club Obedience. And that branched into getting into the breed that I have, which is the Malinois. And of course, that led into naturally one thing after another, protection sports, and moving on from there into detection, which is now a relatively large sport here in Canada.
Yeah, awesome. And you've got obviously your own business now, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
So it's the same thing. It kind of started off working with somebody else, and then because she was more pet dog trainer oriented, I started getting into having some of our clients that wanted to compete, but she wasn't interested in teaching the competitive side. And that branched then out into sort of my own business training competitively while I was helping her with the pet business. And that started to grow just the number of people doing different competitive venues, right? CKC Obedience, Rally Obedience, to where it became its own entity, and there was just no way to kind of keep going through the pet anymore. And it became literally launched into competitive canines.
Yeah, awesome. And with the competitive canines, you offer a number of different services there?
Yeah, we're now going into board. Well, we were doing more board and train as well as train and titles. Yeah. But we also offer private training, group classes, semi-private training. We were, even prior to the pandemic, we were already offering online and virtual lessons, but certainly that's also taken off quite a bit to now where we offer, which we don't see a whole lot, actually what we call hybrid classes. So a lot of our group or even our private lessons now can be done where we have some people attending in person and then others joining in literally via Zoom. So they can still see the group class, but they can also participate just from home without having to be there.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. And so you and I met through Erica's program, of course. So you, canine fitness, you're doing a little bit in that space as well?
Definitely still doing some of that. And a lot of it with both my own dogs as well, but even just with client dogs, was getting into supporting the competitive dog, right? Everybody knows that without proper training, the dogs can't excel, but we were starting to see things like dogs that were struggling at the end of 3 or 4 minutes of healing. And when you really looked, it wasn't a training issue. It was absolutely a fitness issue.
Yeah, awesome. Look, I agree, and whether it's canine competitive sports, or or as you mentioned, that competitive nature, or even just with dogs and deadlifts, the amount of overweight and obese dogs we're seeing out there, so a number of dogs can, and that's sort of a little bit of my mission, to help their decrease their obesity and launch those performance dogs to the next level as well. So I know that we have some similar alignments and values there as well. So that's awesome.
I do think too, and I'm starting to see it even in some of the competitive venues. We're seeing the owners that you would think, even though the dogs are competitive, the dogs are still ending up too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something to consider when we look at how much food we use in training, right? Without that fitness side of things, it can become a serious issue for even the so-called soft sports, right? When we're dealing with competitive obedience or things that people don't realize how much of an impact, even just the few jumps that they do takes on those joints if they're a little bit overweight. And many of the dogs are now.
Yeah, look, and I'm super excited about this space, over the especially over the next 2 to 3, even 5 years as well. So I think there's going to be so much more awareness, and people are going to jump on board definitely, and look for certified trainers, and just increase their education. And that's one of the missions of this podcast here as well. Awesome. So what about your own dogs you have at the moment?
So I have, I breed as well. So I breed Belgian, working Belgian Malinois. And because of the number of sports I train in, and sometimes some of my dogs are cross-trained, but a lot of the times I keep things, at least initially, relatively separate, just due to potential when we're dealing with tracking and IGP and how it can sometimes create a bit of an issue with some of the detection work that we do or things like that. So I do tend to keep relative separate, which means that I have a fair number of dogs. I am down to single digits now. At one point, raising breed dogs, I had we were up to about 15.
Nice.
Dealing with retired dogs, and yeah. So right now, I have 2 older retired dogs. I have 3 older senior but still actively competing dogs. And then I have some of my younger guys. I've got my one of my younger scent dogs. I've got a couple of 2 IGP dogs, and then some dogs that are also cross training for, in terms of canine fitness, they're cross training for a canine biathlon. So they are cross training for a race as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'm super excited. We're going to talk about that very soon, but I'd like to, just touch on, if it's all right, something that interests me, your opinion on, the growth of competitive scent stuff, scent work in Canada in particular. We're just seeing it here in Australia, but no, I don't believe anywhere near that you guys experienced. So can you give us a bit of a background on your opinion on where, how that's come along and developed?
It exploded. So I've been involved right from the very beginning. The first trial we actually had one of the organization, the CEO or whatnot, come up and do a seminar up here. And I went down and took a couple of workshops down there to get a feel for how they were training. It's a lot of the working detection training methods work, but because we're working with a lot of pet dogs as well, there's certainly some differences in how we came about in training. So I wanted to learn a little more about that. But at the time, it wasn't even a competitive venue. It was just something to do with the dogs, right? It was a way to kind of keep them going. It was a way to use things that were not going to get us arrested or blown up when we were trying to train, valuable things that made it accessible to any of our clients, right? And we were all, although we all loved what we were doing. So as a school, we loved competitive obedience. We loved rally. It's always fun to branch out into something different, right? Trying something new. It's great for the dogs as well. And then they got to a point where they actually held their first trial. And so a group of us trained kind of a little bit more intensively, traveled down, competed. We won. I won with one of my dogs in that first one. And it literally, we held, as a school, we were so in love with it. We hosted the second ever trial in Canada. We had already planned it out before we went down and even competed in the first one. I would say by that point, we hosted the second. I think within the first year, there were well over 10 trials, I believe. And it's grown to a point now where we can't keep up with demand even in trials. Like, we are opening competitions up and they are filling within 15 minutes. Wow. So we're literally scrambling. Even as a school up here, we're trying to train other schools to help host these trials. And it's the same across Canada. Western Canada, some trials we've seen fill in 5 and 10 minutes. Wow. Which has been amazing. Yeah. And wow. I think it grows so fast because it's something that's so accessible for people. You don't need a lot of equipment. You don't need a lot of anything, right? You need your dog and some food or a toy and you're good to go.
Yeah, for sure. And just on that, like, while we're talking about it, because I really am interested in it, can you give us a quick rundown, a little bit of history? So we obviously have Canine Noseworks here in Australia as a competitive outlet for that, but that's about it at this point in time. We don't have any other options, particularly for competitions. I remember, it must have been maybe 7 years ago, roughly. I ran a friend of mine. Ran a seminar for myself and a few clients, and I posted a video on YouTube, and probably within 12 months, I got a letter saying, I had to take that video down because I used a particular name in that
Yeah.
in that YouTube video. And look, I had no idea, obviously
Yeah.
it was trademarked, etc. But can you tell us a little bit about, I suppose, the different organisations that run scent, I suppose, competitions in Canada?
So there's there's two main organizations right now.
Mm-hmm.
The one of the organizations in the U.S. that does have the name trademarked actually won't even allow trials to happen in Canada. And so what ended up happening was a completely new organization was formed, and so they call it the Sporting Detection Dogs Association.
Okay.
So this is where we had which is the primary organization I compete with, and where we had the first trial in Canada was hosted through them. Over time, we've had the Canadian Kennel Club has finally stepped in a little bit, and they now have another a titling events. I guess they're not really their own entity as far as scent goes, right? They do everything in terms of dogs.
Yeah.
There are two or three other smaller ones that host more like game styles, right? So you can still get titles and whatnot, but they're run a little bit differently. The primary reason I prefer the Sporting Detection Dogs is it's actually score based as well. So even though it's based on, and the judges, so all of their judges, all of their formative and most of their current board are professional detection dog handlers. So bed bug handlers, airport explosives dog handlers. They're not coming from just a general background, right? They, even within that, they actually even helped contribute to the scoring system. So when you're getting in and you're watching a team search through some of the organizations, a lot of the times it can look really helter-skelter, right? It can look a little chaotic. It can look, you're wondering how things are being missed or things like that. Whereas with the SDDA, there are certain aspects that are scored, but they're very particular about not getting it too stylized. So you'll lose points, for example, if your dog doesn't give the formal alert that you've dictated, but you're not necessarily going to fail.
Sure.
At the same time, they're not going to sit there and say, well, your dog took 3 seconds to sit instead of 2, we're losing points, right? As long as the dog sits, which is what you've said it's going to do, it's fine. The search pattern, right? They will judge it based on the efficiency. If the dog is taking 10 minutes to clear a room because it's bouncing all over the place compared to being detailed without being super slow, right? Or if the dog gets distracted, things like that will cost you points. But there's also what they're trying to go based on, which is an overall impression, right? If they see a team that works really well together, the dog and the handler communicate and flow well, the dog follows direction well, but the handler also reads the dog well, and everything looks really smooth, they're not going to ding you a half point for a minor flaw, right? They are still going to look at the whole picture that's in front of them. And so that can be really kind of cool. It's been really interesting to watch the way they've evolved. They started off with just 2 basic levels. There was, one find in each segment. So there's 3 segments you do, container, an interior, and an exterior. And they've now gone all the way up. There's now 4 different levels, a bunch of championship titles, some of them involving your scores, right? So you need to have scores above a certain level in order to get these championship titles. Different judges, so you can't trial only under one judge in order to get all your qualifying scores and things like that. So I think that variety makes them really fun to trial with. Canadian Kennel Club has a couple of different things. They go a little bit higher in terms of height limit. They're a little more particular on the handler, like the verbal call that the handler makes. It has to be a specific word. It has to be the word alert. But they don't score the same way SDDA does. It's kind of it's a pass or fail at that point.
Yeah, sure.
Which is nice for people that are not competitive, right?
Yeah, for sure. And if someone was to, obviously, to teach this, like I've got a bit of a background in, started in a variety of different, government services and things like that. But do you have to, as a trainer, complete certification?
So in Canada, you don't. There's no requirement, but the main organization, so both Canadian Kennel Club and the SDDA, don't sanctioned training or a training style. One of the things that they very much wanted to do was keep out of the training side of it and stick very much with setting the criteria for performance and things like that.
Sure.
There is a certain code of ethics that any member has to abide by, and obviously judges have to abide by. Certainly, if there is ever an issue with a trainer that was training, and there were issues that way, they could bar them based on the code of ethics, but it's not, it's certainly not a certification. It's obviously recommended. The more experience you have, the more that you've worked with in the different venues, the better you're going to be as a trainer, but it's not required. Like, there's no canine nosework certification in Canada per se as an instructor, the way NACSW has their CNWIs or whichever their acronym is for it.
Yeah, for sure. And being offered to, as we know, a number of different dogs learn differently. So whether using food, like would have been nearly 7-8 years ago, Randy Hare came out from the US to Australia. Back then. If the dog was interested in food, I'm sorry, you can't, this doesn't work on your dog.
That's it.
Your dog's got to be, very, very prey driven, and particularly balls, as well. So, having a variety of techniques in, up your sleeve for different dogs is the way to go. It's so varied, and every dog's going to be different.
Absolutely. And I think it gradually, and it's funny, a few of the pro trainers have actually commented that they're seeing some evolution even in the way the so-called pro trainers are approaching true working dogs, or at least some of their styles. Like, they're actually adapting a little bit, having seen the success that the pet dog is having using food, or using some of the, not all of them, but some of them are becoming more comfortable using markers in their training. Which was certainly a no-go for a long time in detection. You didn't use a marker, you just threw your ball, or you did whatever. It was kind of frowned on. You didn't know what you were marking. Maybe the dog wasn't sniffing what you were marking, right? But as they're starting to see all of these different techniques working, you're starting to see some shift, which is really kind of neat to see.
Oh, for sure. Look, I remember going back sometime, once again, throwing your rolled up towel at the dog, as getting it as close to its head as possible, and if it was a softer sort of dog, they'd be like closing their eyes, going, "Oh, I don't know if that's a reward or not."
That's it, exactly.
It's hilarious, but yeah, definitely. I'm loving seeing that evolve here in Australia, where I've been keeping an eye on it for the last couple of years, and I'm seeing more clubs, more trainers get involved with it. For me though, I would just like a variety, or that's other different side of having to say you have to certify our way.
Yes.
So I'm a member with the organization, but will I particularly train my dogs in that style? Probably not, but I'll potentially compete, because there's no other options.
That's it. Well, and I think it's for me, even when I look at it, like my training style from the very first class that we had 5, 6, 10 years ago, however long it's been now, it's been longer than I care to admit. It's been long enough. Our class structure, our program, like everything is really completely different. And even it's funny because I will often get inquiries, like, we have our level 1 program, has homework, handouts, whatever. By the time level 2 comes around, I don't have homework anymore at that point, because the groups of dogs themselves are so different. I can't send you home with a pre-written sheet. I don't know what I'm going to need to do with your dog tomorrow, next week. This group might be run completely differently than the next group. I've got, one class right now that is all relatively, this is a shift we're starting to see. They're relatively new dog owners, or at the very least, they're not competitive trainers. We were seeing initially a lot of retired agility dogs, or people that already had a clear understanding of markers. They had a clear understanding of timing and whatnot. And I've got another class that's all made up of that. The way we're working with those dogs is going to be very different than the way I'm working with a greener handler that maybe doesn't have the same degree of timing, or the ability to turn food into play, or the ability to really shift their own emotional energy, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's interesting, because actually, look, literally just, I did get up before our call, obviously. I got out of bed on a Sunday morning, and I posted up, or I had scheduled a post for both canine fitness and human fitness that I'm working on about individual program design. So basically, customizing a program to suit that individual needs. The post that I put up was about canine fitness. Because it's very similar to what you're talking about. We don't know where they're at. We don't know. You could be, if we offered let's just say a level 1, level 2, whatever it may be. Everyone may be different at different levels, right? So I decided to do that. We're all, yes, we're all covering the program, but hey, from a business point of view, if you want a little bit extra, or you don't want to take the class and you just want me to customize the program, I'm using an app where you get, we will deliver your program 2-3 times a week, to your phone. So I believe that's a great way to go about it as well.
Well, and I think we have to consider the different, especially when we're training with things like this, even the different motivation levels of the dogs, right? If I've got, the crazy food driven lab, I've got the toy driven border collie, and I've got the nervous former feral rescue dog that barely will take food in one group. I can't give you one, even though you all started at the same time, it's not necessarily going to progress the same way, right?
Yeah, for sure. Awesome.
And if you follow a certification program, how do you adjust for that, right?
That's right. Look, and I particularly, I suppose I can't comment because I haven't done that certification. I don't know how it sort of flows, etc. But I agree with you there. If it's like buying a franchise, this is my way, A to Z, and you have to stick to A to Z. But what if there's a problem at B? Well, fuck, I don't care. You've still got to go A to Z.
That's it.
So having trainers that are adaptable to the specific needs of the dogs is, it's a win-win for trainers, but those particular trainers, but also the clients as well.
That's it. Well, I mean, it's the reason we've been able to go from training freaking Siberian Huskies
Yeah.
in detection. I mean, I cannot picture a professional trainer that would ever, or I shouldn't say a professional trainer, a professional working dog that would be a Husky. Like, you just wouldn't see an airport explosives dogs as a Siberian Husky. They wouldn't know how to work with them.
Yeah.
But it's taught us crazy amounts in terms of how to work with these different dogs by having the freedom to try something. And if it doesn't work, we can move on and try something else, right? Rather than being stuck to a specific outline,
Yeah, I'm super, so I've moved away from I've moved away from Malinois in the last few years, and I've moved into GSPs. So I've got two GSPs at the moment, 1.5 and 1.2.5, and really looking forward to seeing what these guys can do with their noses. So really excited about that.
We're seeing actually more, you're starting to see more of the hounds, more of the pointers coming out in detection, even in just general application. I know one of our border crossings that's not far from here, it's a GSP that works it primarily.
Yeah, and what was I follow the Penn Vet Working Dog Centre as well, and I see a couple of police detection dogs come through the GSPs. So just watching those guys and going, this super exciting. But hey, I'm going to deviate a little bit if that's cool. Let's we can talk about just scent detection all day, but let's get into health and fitness. I suppose the first thing I wanted to bring up is your pole sport. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So the irony is that even pole is connected to dogs. So I was already running with dogs. I was doing some things, and I was known for having a really pathetic Schutzhund dumbbell throw, particularly with the Schutzhund 3 dumbbell.
Yep.
And of course, because we're judged on the dog's speed going out and speed going back, my dogs were handicapped essentially in the sport. It's like, I need to be able to get this dumbbell further. So I had actually at that point contacted a local personal trainer. We started doing a little bit of work, so I wanted to improve some of my running, but also the throw. That was the biggest thing, was I wanted to improve this throw. But I don't know, 2 or 3 sessions in, she says she also had another studio location. She said, for upper body, for this, you really should try this sport. I want you to go and take this class. We've got it at our other studio. And I went down and tried. They have what we call pole plays. So they're basically all level drop-ins. You go, an instructor will take you through things. They'll get you started on a couple things. They'll move to the next person. They'll keep coming around. Yep. And I went with that one. I kind of tried it out once. And this is kind of interesting, and tried it at a second time. And they encouraged me to go, into the level 1 class from there. And it kind of continued on, and it became something that it started off, and it it served its purpose. It absolutely did help to improve my dumbbell throw. Do not get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
It absolutely took on a life of its own, to a point where I've trained to compete, and I now teach as well.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. I suppose what was your, what was your first thoughts? Look, we'll talk about the elephant in the room. What was your first
Yeah.
thoughts when you walked in and you went, "Fuck, it's pole dancing. Strippers do pole dancing."
So the irony was, I honestly had no clue. Like, I kind of had some concept, and it was funny. The very first thing the trainer said to me, I looked at her and said, "Okay, well, what do I wear when I go?" And her exact words, I will never forget it, were "as little as possible." And I looked at her and I'm like, "Okay, so I think I have a pair of shorts somewhere in the back of my closet. I'll try and find." I had no idea what I was doing walking into it.
Yeah.
And I think initially, because that is not, it's funny. I am very much, there's definitely two sides to pole. There's definitely the more sexy side that people go with, and then the more sporty side that people go with. And I am far on the sporty side of the camp.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit when I first went in
Mhm.
to get used to, like, the idea of moving your body in a different way and
Yeah.
feeling how your body moves without being so technical about it, right? It's not like,
Mhm.
okay, drive your heels down for your squat, or pick your toes up, or,
Mhm.
make sure that you've got your keep your lumbar curve. It was very, very different, except for the point
Mhm.
your toes, because
Yep.
you'll hear that to death. Point your toes, point your toes, point your toes.
Yep.
It wasn't as crazy, because I did come a little bit from a dance background.
Mhm.
But it took a little bit for me to kind of see. I think I got lucky. Like, when I went in my first time, there was a lot more advanced girls. So I was seeing a lot more of the sports side. I was seeing a lot more of
Yeah.
the tricks, a lot more of the power side to it, compared to more of the sexy side.
Mhm.
But it would definitely took some getting used to the thought that, okay, I'm going in here wearing far less than I'm used to, dealing with your own body exposure, right? You have to get a certain amount of comfort in.
Yep.
And then I had no idea at the time that it was actually a competitive sport. I literally
Yeah.
walked in thinking, okay, well, I'll deal with the sporty side. It wasn't until, I think, about a month in, that I was told, no, there's actual competitions. And I started researching it, because
Yeah.
it wasn't something that ever entered my head, right?
Mhm.
And actually seeing some of the competitive side, I went, okay, so it's not just a stripper thing. There is actually a
Yeah.
sport to
Yeah.
this. And
That's right.
okay,
Yep.
okay, now I can start to maybe get into this a little bit more and start to feel like, what's the technical side of things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. And putting that, like I did a great podcast this week with Dave Nixon, and he, in his recent book he talks about, removing the crap, right? And
Yeah,
it's that mental crap, or that goes with that particular individual potentially, that
yeah,
they may not come along and try that particular sport because of the whatever it may be, stigma, own, that,
yeah.
like you said, that sexy side of things. But what sort of, what sort of people are coming along to, and trying a class and loving it, and what sort of results are they getting? Because look, I've got a friend that does it as well, and I've seen
Yep.
studios pop up. Look, I'll be honest, have I walked through the door? No, I haven't, right? But I'm a 90 kilo guy and I like to deadlift, and
Yes.
do I like to move and practice movements, based practices? Yeah, but it's generally in a park or a field, or at the on the rings in a gym and things like that. So what sort of people are coming along, I suppose, to your class to experience it and try it?
I think, generally speaking, we are seeing a little bit more variety than we used to. Typically, we're seeing not not quite mid-age, but a little bit younger than mid-age, or older retired women as well are starting to come in. We're not seeing as many men, which kind of sucks, because there is actually some really cool, like, when you actually Google, you can see some really cool strength-based moves that a lot of times even women start to struggle with, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That said, I think a lot of the times the people that are coming in, they're starting with all different shapes and sizes,
yeah.
right? Like, we're getting to see now women that are coming in thinking there's no way they're going to be able to do it. They do come in a lot of the times wanting to try just something, kind of, they tried it at a bachelorette or whatever, and they're
Yeah.
like, okay, I want to just try and play around with some of the sexy side of things. And then they start to see the strength that they're building, even just holding it up. And I think it's something people don't connect initially when they come in, or if they don't understand the sport. Something as simple as lifting just with your hands, you're literally lifting your entire body weight.
Mhm.
So we're going from, instead, 30-pound bicep curls, never mind that, you're lifting 110, 120, 200 pounds
Yep.
by your arms, right?
Mhm.
And they start to come in and go, there's no way I could do that.
Yep.
And then they go through the 8 weeks and they see their progress, and we start to see them kind of connect more and more. And we're seeing a significant increase, I think, in some of the older population, which is cool because the stigma is starting to
Yep.
loosen a little bit around it, right?
Yeah.
It's loosening a bit around the idea of it being a stripper based and coming more into the sports side. And so we're seeing these women come in now that are even in their 50s and 60s
Mm-hmm.
and going up. And we get my favorite is one that came in. She said, there's no way I'll ever, what we call inverts. So there's no way I'll ever go upside down.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way, it'll never happen. I'll never be able to get that. She's now going completely upside down, hooking with legs, hanging without her hands. And this is like not even 6 months of work.
Mm-hmm.
She's just, but it's that confidence that comes out. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we start to see people do well, is there's usually a little bit, the first class, the first level, girls are in and they're wearing, their long sleeves or their t-shirts, and they're wearing their leggings. And as they gain more comfort with their body, and they start to be a little bit less just realizing that we're not all watching you, right? Everybody's at their pole, everybody's doing their thing, there's not a whole lot of staring. They start to focus more on what their body can do rather than what it can look like, and that lets them make some progress. It lets them gain that confidence, and we'll see them even come in after that into other forms of fitness because they want to improve their pole, right? We'll see them come into what we call our tone and burn classes, which are just free weights and whatnot, because they want to improve that. It's funny because it's one of those things where I can sit there and almost give you, maybe not verbatim, but a relatively stereotypical, this is who comes to my scent classes and this is who comes to my obedience classes. Pole has been just this crazy variety. Even in the one class on, was it Wednesday night, we had, there's probably a, late teens, early 20s something. We've got a 60-year-old bus driver. We've got, the 35-year-old mom of 5. Like there's just no rhyme or reason to who is coming. Almost everybody ends up doing it.
Yeah, look, I think it's awesome, and look, any activity that people can get up off the couch and participate in, I don't care what it is, providing they're out there having a go in a supportive environment, it's fantastic, like I said, I've followed, I've been watching your journey, and I look at some of that stuff and I go crazy. I feel that I couldn't do that, go inverted and do some stuff, certainly. It's an interesting sport. I'll be honest. Once again, I haven't looked into it, but I believe that a lot of our listeners will probably now go and have a Google or a search and find out what it's all about. But certainly, as you mentioned, there's sort of two sides of the coin there, and one, you don't have to wear 8-inch heels, and
I to this day have never put on a pair of heels, and it's a bit of a running joke at the studio that there's this. One of the other instructors has the same size shoe as I have, and it just has not happened. I said, that's not my end of things. And yet there's some of the girls, that's their absolute favorite. They love doing routines with heels. And that's, I think the beauty of it is how you can take it in any way you want to, right?
For sure. Look, and I've got friends in different spaces, and I've got a friend that loves to do burlesque, and she loves dancing. My wife and I have been to some shows, and it's fantastic, and but it's her outlet. She has under that she has a whole different stage name and things like that. But it's her outlet to move and dance, and she has a great time. And the girls that she does that with is they have a great time.
Absolutely.
So, like I said, it doesn't matter what, what particular sport that you're in, have an interest in, just go and move and give it a try.
That's it. And realize that anything you do to move is going to improve your quality of life, period.
Yeah, for sure. And, if we tie it back to, say, most potentially dog people who are listening are going to be dog trainers or own their own business, or manage their own business, having that outlet away from the dogs, how important is that?
Absolutely. I think it's huge. I started it was absolutely had to do with the dogs, but I think it's also a matter of understanding that you do have like a well-rounded life, right? We do get so focused on our dogs, and literally, I mean, we get up at dark 100 in order to let them out because they need to go to the bathroom, or we spend so much time and energy into it that we start to forget what else is going on around us, right? That there is this whole other world. And I think it can almost leave us dependent that if something does happen, and we all know dog politics, right? Inevitably something happens in some dog group or another, and dog businesses being that way. If we don't have something else to kind of pull into or to fall into or to turn to for some of that support, you can end up just feeling completely lost about it, right?
Yep.
And I
And
do
look,
think too, it's having that bit of time away, right? Is that little bit of time that is yours, whether you read, reading whatever, but doing something that is just yours. The problem is a lot of the times we take that time to read, but we're reading a dog book. We're
yeah,
reading, right? We're on
dog
Google, we're
nutrition or something.
researching.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or we're increasing our knowledge, and we're doing we're watching Michael Ellis's latest DVDs, or Dave Crowe, like, we're doing so much around dogs. We just need that outlet away, and look, it happens
Yeah,
all the time, and lots of friends and colleagues are in the same boat, so by totally shutting off and either going to the gym or going to a facility. Look, even worse in lockdown though, yeah, but even just taking that,
that's it.
obviously we're doing a lot of gyms were providing virtual classes and stuff, but even just
Yeah,
going, all right, we're going to do this hour pole session led by the instructor. That's going to be it for me for the day, but I'm going to love it. I'm going to give it my best.
that's it. Exactly. And it gives you that sort of that separation. And I think there's a certain amount of compartmentalization that
Mm,
needs to happen where you've got that hour that is literally just yours. You're not in your business, you're not working on your business. You
mm,
are literally just putting everything to the side and taking that time off. I think as business owners, it's something that we don't do, right? We just one more email. I know it's 9 o'clock at night, but I'm just going to respond to this email, or
mhm,
well, I'm just going to, I'll
yeah.
contact this client, even though it's, 9 a.m. on a Sunday or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we all do it. I'm sitting down 6:30 p.m. last night, and one of my clients rings me that I had scheduled in for today to say that he's been called into work and we have to postpone the session. I'm like, dude, no worries. I don't know why I'm just about to have dinner, but I answered the phone, right? What am I doing? Answer the phone when I'm sitting down
Exactly.
to have dinner. But I did it. And he's like, sorry,
Yep.
can't make it. I said, look, no dramas. We'll sort it out on Monday. It's Saturday night. I'm sitting down to have dinner. We'll sort it out on Monday, rebook you. But we do it, like,
That's it.
and we'll talk, one of my other guests, Hannah, we're talking about blocking out times and like just obviously managing your own time. And, if at if at 5 o'clock your phone goes off and you don't do anything for the rest of the evening, fantastic. If you these are the things we sort of get into our own habits. And if fitness takes place in the morning or in the afternoon for you, you got to block out that time.
That's it. Well, and I think that's one of the nice things about having like scheduled classes too for some people is it can force you to have that. I know Thursday nights at 6:15 or whatever, I can't schedule anything. I have that class. I might take a call. I did it on Thursday. I took a call during the first half of my 5 o'clock class, lost half of my class, but I knew I also had that 6:15 class, right? And so
Yep.
it was knowing that I have those times that at that 6:15 class, because it's a group class, it's not like an open class, that phone has to be turned off, right?
hmm
It gets
hmm
turned off, it gets put away. That way I know I can't fall into
hmm
answering a client email or responding to a text or whatever, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, awesome. Look, I'd love to talk about the Canine Biathlon. Let's talk about yourself first. So goals. What is for them? Some of those people, most of them, my listeners are in US and Canada, but for those guys in Australia going, what the fuck is Canine Biathlon? Can you give us a quick rundown?
So the Canine Biathlon was meant to be, or it takes similar concept to what's probably more familiar to a lot of people, the Spartan races, things like that. So it's basically an obstacle course race, but that's done with human and dog together. So you're not racing just by yourself, which means that some of the obstacles obviously are a little bit different. We're not necessarily doing some of the rigs, so you're not swinging, from rings or things like that. But you've got for example, a log cross where you're carrying your dog across. You've got mud tunnels to crawl through. There are hanging barrels that are swinging that you and the dog have to crawl through together. There are certain jumps or walls, right, that you need to try and climb or help the dog get over, or pick them up, send them over, call them over, whatever is going to work for you as a team. I believe it's a 4 mile. It's up to 4 miles now. Race, and they have different categories. They have different categories, so you can have like in terms of prizing or whatnot. They have civilians, they have working teams, so they will have like military canine unit teams that will come in and do this together, but it's also has, you know, civilian teams. You can go in just as a fun day.
Mhm.
It's kind of interesting because they do a 2-day setup. The first day is competitive. You don't have to try to be competitive, but you can. The second day is basically not timed. You just get to go and run the course again with a dog.
Yep.
Which is kind of fun. They do, I think they allow people to run it without dogs, but most people are going in. Obviously, it's U.S.
Yeah.
Canine Biathlon. It's most
Yeah.
people going in with dogs.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I've been following them for some years now, and I really like the concept. I've spoke to some friends about trying to run a very similar concept here in Australia. There are a couple, but I'd love to be able to put the effort into to host or run something like that in the near future. I think it'd be fantastic. I have, on a side note, I have reached out to the guys from U.S. Canine Biathlon to come on the podcast and give us a little bit about the history and how things came about and how they've seen the how it progress as well. But I've got a response from their Facebook page, and I've sent a couple of emails, but no replies just at this point in time. So I'd love to have them on the show, which would be great.
Be super awesome. Yeah, it's just something. It's nice because it gets, again, we're dealing with trying to get dogs out of that obesity side of things, right? It gets people out training with their dog. It's not just then their own fitness and not just them training their dog's fitness, right? You're working as a team at that point,
Yeah, for sure. So how are you going about your training for that? So did you? Sorry, did I see that you've engaged? Do you work with a company over there? Yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I actually started. So initially, my work was primarily with the gym that because I also teach human fitness classes, group fitness, and whatever. And so I was working primarily through that. I had set the goal was to complete it on the competitive day in under 50 minutes. It's actually extended. It's a little bit longer of a race now. I may adjust my goal depending. The dog that I wanted to race competitively with the first day is going to be 10.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the goal was originally to race this last May.
Yep.
And it got put off and it kept getting put off. And what started to happen is as we got into when it was first put off, I looked at the human. I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go with this human Spartan race. I still wanted a goal. For me, having something to train towards helps with dealing with that health and fitness side. Otherwise, I get sucked into just doing what works maybe best just in terms of clients or group classes. There's no necessarily rhyme or reason to it. And it gets really easy for me to just go kind of crazy and just run. I run with dogs as well. And I go crazy just running and not actually like creating a structured plan. And I tend to overtrain that way. So having a specific goal was really important to have a plan design. What happened at that point was I also knew nutritionally, even though I had some understanding of, and my diet was pretty good. It was relatively healthy. I wasn't eating a lot of junk, but I knew that I was starting to find pairing training for a more intense thing, running to keep, because I also run with the dogs to keep their conditioning for detection. So I was running with not only competitive dogs, but detection dogs on top of teaching classes. And it was starting to I was feeling the fatigue. I was feeling that I was struggling to keep weight. I wasn't losing muscle yet, but I knew it was kind of coming close. And so I actually had reached out at that point to a specific nutrition that was designed for athletes. And in particular, she works with obstacle course athletes. So she was actually an obstacle course racer herself. She is certified in nutrition, but that was her specialty. So rather than trying to go with just regular dietitian, and this was actually in the midst of the first lockdown. So I knew I couldn't deal with anybody face to face. It wasn't going to be allowed. And her program was actually online.
Fantastic.
Which was great. So I went through her program. And I saw the work she was doing at the time with a coach online. But I knew it kind of in my head, I knew my schedule between teaching a business, my own training. There's no way I was going to be able to deal with somebody where I was having to travel or where I was having to meet with a trainer in a gym or whatever. And I didn't see the need for that. I already have a gym. I have the stuff to deal with. So I contacted her coach who does online training plans. And at that point, the Spartan race that I had been planning on got put off again. And I decided since there was likely going to be a year to do it, I'm going to do it instead of with the goal of just completing it. I actually set specific time goals, knowing that I've got the extra time to work on it. And so it's been really good because he actually does the program up online. It's through Outlaw OCR. And so he does the program online sends it to me, and then I can do it in what works for me. So he knows my schedule, he knows my gym schedule, he knows my teaching schedule.
Yep.
It's laid out for that. But if I need to adjust things, I can, and I don't have to do, it's not like I have to meet with him Monday at 9 a.m. Right? It's
Yep.
like, okay, I know on Monday I need to get a 15K in.
Yep.
Fine, we'll do that whenever I can, right? Whatever's going to fit around clients, whatever's going to fit around
Yep.
my times, right?
For sure.
And that's been a huge help. It's created major improvements, but it's also taken away, because I'm dealing with so many, and I think we all do this, so many dog training plans, right? We're
Yep.
working so much on our canine fitness plans.
Yep.
It got to a point where I was doing all of my training was falling into what was working for them, right?
Yep.
So the running paces were designed for what was going to be best for them, and it was really tricky to like create and stick to my own plan. So kind of outsourcing that, then I don't have to find the time to draw my own plan. Is literally, here you go, this is what you do, and we can adjust.
100%. I'm the same, and especially, if say we're big for me, I do Canny Cross as well, but we're doing a 5K Canny Cross, with my dog, our paces, my heart rate's way too high compared if I'm going to, if I'm going to work on building my base and my aerobic zone, he wants to Canny Cross and he wants to do, say, I don't know, 3 minutes 30 pace for 5Ks. And I'm like, dude, today's 7 minutes, today's 15Ks at 7-minute pace, like we're cruising, so for me, having a coach, but also separating my dog stuff and and my personal stuff as well. I've interviewed some guys on the podcast as well. So the dogs will go on a treadmill, for instance, for a little bit, on the days that I need to do my own training or longer, slower training, because I don't want them to come out and be, as we know in training, any confusion there as well.
That's it. And I think it depends too a little bit on how your running style is. Like for my guys, because we don't, they're running with me, I don't have to worry as much about that, except for that, again, I was working on the same thing, right? You come out, you're going too fast to try and keep their heart rates up without thinking about the fact that yours is not, you're not getting any base building at all, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think athletes in general, we push too hard to begin with. So having somebody outside of ourselves to say, hey, take it easy, or here, focus on this, don't go so crazy, work on this, and you start to see the difference, right?
Yeah, for sure. And trying to incorporate that, and I believe that not everyone, but a big percentage of people potentially should have a coach or at least a mentor to sit down and go, hey, I think you do this. You don't have to go into thousands of dollars worth of coaching programs or anything like that, but goal setting is super important, but also having someone and a supportive network to get you through to those goals. So like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be paid coaches. It just could be people that are like-minded and similar, doing on a similar journey.
Well, and it's just having somebody for accountability, right? And I think that's one of, it's super simple. And some of the times accountability, it's funny. We always think of accountability as holding us to actually getting the workouts in, but some of the times it's also holding us accountable to rest, right? And recover. And it's funny because so Sean actually has access to my Garmin watch. So he's not actually local to me. He's a couple hours away.
Yep.
And I think for a lot of people now, especially when we're running our own businesses, when we're doing all that, having that ability to outsource something, but having it be that flexible. And now with the pandemic, so many things are moving online that we have this option, right?
For sure.
It might have been, I think I know for me, I never really focused on looking for a coach initially because it was just in my head, it was going to be impossible. A, why do I need this? And B, how am I going to ever find the time to work with somebody, right? How am I going to ever fit that into a schedule?
Yeah.
Yeah,
look, I agree.
Having it, they can look back and tell, right, what my workouts have been, or you get onto the groups. I think a lot of online coaches now have, Facebook groups. We have options, so you can sit there and you've got somebody to be accountable to and say, hey, it's leg day. We all know it's leg day. Did you get your workout in? Or, I was really exhausted, I decided to go tomorrow, and having somebody follow up then and say, did you do tomorrow? Right?
Yeah, that's right. Because one day missed turns into 3 days missed, and then it's a week missed, and then 2 weeks. So those, we can potentially slip into those habits, for sure. But look, Stephanie, look, it's been a really, really great chat. I'd like to let you give a bit of a shout out. So if people are in the US or Canada or even around the world, because I know that you're doing online programming these days as well for your dog stuff, whereabouts would they find you?
So primarily on Instagram and Facebook through Competitive Canines. Letter K number 9. Of course, we always have to explain that with canines, right? It's always that interesting part when we have it in there. Most of our classes come on through Facebook. Certainly we can be reached by Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger as well. And I do try to keep up just even little clips from classes and things like that, so people can get an idea of what it is that we're out there doing too, right?
Yeah, awesome. No worries. So, look, once again, I appreciate you coming on today. It's been really good, and I hope our listeners out there can really take something away from it.
Awesome.
Alrighty, so thank you very much, guys. If you've liked what you heard today, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. It would really mean the world to me. And we'll see you next episode.